Shalom, Most High in Christ bless. I'm Officer Micaiah, and today's reader is
Brother Nathaniel.
And this is another edition of 15 Minutes with Lionz. Today's topic is addressing the spirit of anger. So a lot of people come out of the world into the truth, dealing with these spirits, and it's one of the things that people got to learn how to battle with and how to address. So we're going to go through the scriptures today on addressing that spirit. So without further ado, let's start off with Galatians chapter 5, verse 16.
The book of Galatians, chapter 5 and verse 16. This I say then, walk in the spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh.
So in this truth, you must walk in the spirit of Christ so you don't fulfill the lust of the flesh and sin, right? Read on.
For the flesh lusteth against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh.
So the flesh wars against the spirit, and the spirit wars against the flesh. Read on.
And these are contrary, the one to the other.
They're contrary one to another, right? Read on.
So that ye cannot do the things that ye would.
So you can't do the things that you will ought to do before coming into the truth. If you're the type of person that will act out on your anger, which is an emotion, you can't do that in the truth. You got to walk in the spirit. You have to examine what the Bible says about anger and how to properly address these situations. So you can't do the things that you would, Rick.
But if ye be led of the spirit, ye are not under the law.
You're not under the law of sacrifice. So from there, let's get Ephesians chapter 4, verse 31.
The book of Ephesians, chapter 4 and verse 31. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you.
So read this one more time.
Let all bitterness and wrath and anger.
So you got to let all bitterness, wrath, and anger, read on.
And clamor and evil speaking be put away from you.
So when you come into the doors of repentance, the spirit of anger, malice, clamor, all of that has to leave your spirit because we're in the spirit of Christ now, keeping the laws in the faith of Christ. So you have to apply the scriptures of love thy neighbor as thyself properly. Read on.
With all malice. And be ye kind one to another.
That's the thing our people have a problem with, is being kind one to another. So you got to overcome anger, strife, and malice with kindness and being tenderhearted. Read.
Tenderhearted, forgiving one another.
Able to forgive people. Here's why.
Even as God, for Christ's sake, has forgiven you.
As for God, for Christ's sake, has forgiven us, we got to forgive one another. So you got to let go of all the bitterness, the anger, and the wrath. Those are things and attributes we cannot carry in this truth, because then there's going to be a lot of contentions, right? Let's get the definition of anger real quick.
The definition of anger. A strong feeling of annoyance, displeasure, or hostility.
So it's a strong feeling. So anger is an emotion, right? That goes into anger, annoyance, and displeasure or hostility. Read some good ones.
Annoyance, vexation.
Vexation of spirit.
Irritation.
You find yourself getting irritated a lot with things that happen in this truth with trials or with brothers and sisters directly. Read.
Indignation, displeasure, resentment, rage, fury, wrath, outrage.
See, now you anger, wrath, fury, outrage, indignation, and vexation. These are things that we read about in the truth. Air rage, right? We read vexation, the spirit, and things of that nature in the scriptures. But from there, let's go back, right? Let's go to James chapter 1, verse 19. Let's move on.
The book of James, chapter 1 and verse 19.
Here's one way to address anger, right?
Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear.
Let every man be what?
Swift to hear.
Because a lot of times when you be having offenses that happen in the truth or things of that nature, it comes from not hearing a brother or sister out, right? It comes from confusion, because God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. That's why you got to be swift to hear. everybody is like commonly quick to speak and have the last word that some people would say, right? But you got to be swift to hear. Read on.
Slow to speak.
And slow to speak. Blame not before thou hast examined the truth, right? Read.
Slow to wrath.
You got to learn how to be slow to wrath. Slow to get angry. A lot of people be having ill tempers and they brains is like a thermometer going from like 60 degrees to 100 degrees in a second. Lid pops off. You got to be slow to anger. You got to be patient, right? You got to have some temperance about yourself. Read on.
For the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God.
Because when you start to get angry and wrath comes in, you're not working the righteousness of God. Because what does anger, wrath, malice leads to? It leads to hatred, right? It leads to sin. So from there, let's get some righteous anger. Because there's a such thing as righteous anger. Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and verse 7.
Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and verse 7. Surely oppression maketh a wise man mad.
So surely oppression maketh a wise man mad, right? So look at the world that we live in today. We're at the bottom of society. Last hired, first fired. Our people getting killed all of the time. We're seeing things happen to like the Kawan Charles, where he gets kidnapped, murdered, things of that nature. All of the stuff that has happened to our people in the 60s and in today's time with police killings, oppression. We are an extremely oppressed people that's been living in hellish conditions for 500 plus years, especially on this side of the earth. Oppression makes a wise man mad, where you start to look into society of like, yo, what is going on here? I'm mad at the sight of my eyes of what's going on, right? Read it again.
Surely oppression maketh a wise man mad.
A wise man that fears God and keep the commandments will be mad at the sight of his eyes to see the decay, the state of his people. That's righteous anger. That is okay anger to have, because it's going to move you to what? Stay in the spirit. It's going to move you to wake up your people, right? Oppression makes a wise man mad. No one wants to be oppressed, but that's the conditions that we find ourselves in. Read.
And a gift destroyeth the heart.
And a gift destroyeth the heart, right? Let's jump down to verse 9.
Verse 9. Be not hasty in thy spirit to be angry.
So now it's talking about being hasty in your spirit to be angry. Let's say you got offenses with brothers and sisters, right? You keep getting offended. You can't be hasty to get angry where you're going to be moved to malice and wrath. That's where having conversations about things like in the Matthew 18 and situations like that arise. You have to apply the scriptures that you may gain a brother and sister so you don't be soon to be angry. Because here's why.
For anger resteth in the bosom of fools.
Anger resteth in the bosoms of fools. Because when you're a fool, you're going to do something foolish and sinful. Let's get the precept for fools. 1 Samuel 13:13.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 13 and verse 13. And Samuel said to Saul, Thou hast done foolishly. Thou hast not kept the commandment of the Lord thy God.
That's why it says anger resteth in the bosom of fools, because you're going to do things that's cause you not to keep the commandments, like acting out on anger, and you start to fight with your brothers and sisters and things of that nature. That's the reason why anger resteth in the bosom of fools. Finish it out.
Which he commanded thee.
And we can drop that from there. So let's get Proverbs chapter 29 and 11.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 29 and verse 11. A fool uttereth all his mind.
So a fool is going to utter off all of his mind. So when you angry with someone, you're just going to speak venomous and heinous words. But remember, a fool is somebody that transgressed God's law, statutes, and commandments. Read.
But a wise man keepeth it in till afterwards.
The wise man is going to keep in his anger until afterwards, right? Like if you're offended by something, you're going to keep it in and not blurt it out in the midst of the congregation. You're going to wait until there's a private setting that you may be able to apply Matthew 18 to let your brother or sister know that you're offended to gain your brother or sister back, right? You ain't going to be spewing out words. That's how our people and some of us operated in the world, where when you angry about something, you just blurting it all out, and then now it's finna be a whole fight to break out. But remember how we started in the beginning of the class. You got to walk in the spirit and not fulfill the lust of the flesh and do what the Bible say, right? Read on. Or don't read on. Let's get Ephesians chapter 4. No, we ain't going to go there. Proverbs 14:29.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 14 and verse 29. He that is slow to wrath is of great understanding.
So you got to be slow to wrath in this truth, because if you're slow to wrath, you show that you have a great understanding. Let's deal with that understanding real quick. Just going to hold that here. Let's go to Psalm chapter 111 and verse 10. Because we know anger resteth in the bosom of fools, and that's to transgress God's laws. But if you're slow to wrath, that means you have a great understanding. But what do you have a great understanding of? Let's get that.
The book of Psalms, chapter 111 and verse 10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
So the foundation of wisdom is to fear God, fear his judgments. Read.
A good understanding. Have all they that do his commandments.
So someone that is slow to wrath is of great understanding, because he understands to do the commandments when that spirit of anger comes in, not to act out on the bitterness, the anger, and the wrath, because those are things that we forsake, right? Let's go back. Then read it from the top. Proverbs 14 and 29.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 14 and verse 29. He that is slow to wrath is of great understanding, but he that is hasty of spirit exalteth folly.
See, if you hasty of spirit, hasty to get angry, you're going to exalt folly and sin. You're going to do things that's going to offend brothers and sisters. You're going to do things that's going to cause you to be in the midst of sin and the transgression of God's laws, right? Jump to Proverbs chapter 14 and 17.
Verse 17. He that is soon angry dealeth foolishly.
He that is soon angry dealeth foolishly. We dealt with the precept of foolish, but read on.
And a man of wicked devices is hated.
Because when you're angry, you're going to do things with wicked devices. You're going, like, for example, if you offend a brother or sister, you're going to start antagonizing people just to deliberately offend them, right? That's a wicked device, instead of just addressing the problem head on and not letting the anger overcome you. Or you're the type of person that just let everybody push you over, and you are constantly offended, but you harbor that in, and then over time that wrath overcomes you, and now you're exalting folly, right? The wicked devices start to kick in. But with truth comes problems. With those problems, you got to learn how to properly address them, right? So from there, get Proverbs 15 and 1. There's one way.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 15 and verse 1. A soft answer turneth away wrath.
So a soft answer turneth away wrath. This is for brothers and sisters that's married, right? A soft answer. If there's some issues in the household with the man and the wife, a soft answer is going to turn away that wrath. We got to learn how to properly know how to communicate with people. A lot of people just like to have the last word and sound like lions roaring against one another. But a soft answer turneth away wrath. But read.
But grievous words stir up anger.
Grievous words is going to continue to stir up anger in one's spirit in this truth. So, with that being said there, get Matthew chapter 5 and verse 9. You got to be slow to anger. Only way you'll be slow to anger is reading scriptures that address the spirit that you battle with. If it be anger, Proverbs 14:15, some great chapters. Matthew 5 and 9.
The book of Matthew, chapter 5 and verse 9. Blessed are the peacemakers.
What?
Blessed are the peacemakers.
So we got to be peacemakers in this truth instead of dealing with anger and strife. Read.
For they shall be called the children of God.
You're going to be called the children of God because peacemakers love thy neighbor as thyself, right? Now, get the precept real quick in James chapter 3 and verse 18.
The book of James, chapter 3 and verse 18. And the fruits of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace.
So the fruit of righteousness is sown in them that make peace, right? Because in this truth, anger, strife, and things of that nature is going to come. But you got to seek peace with your brothers and sisters. You got to read the scriptures on how to properly address the anger, because we as a people are people that come from broken families, broken households. Only way we know how to deal with things is through anger and strife. So you got to read the scriptures and understand that if you deal with anger and be quick to wrath and you don't know how to address that, you're moving sinfully in this truth. So now you have to go through the scriptures to find the solutions to address that spirit that you may be able to overcome it. So with that, that's another edition of 15 Minutes with the Lions. And with that, we say shalom. Most High in Christ bless.
Shalom.